The Margaret Cho podcast from Erios is funny, sensitive, and a little quirky, just like the comedian herself. Each week, Margaret sits down for an intimate interview with celebrity guests like Queer Eye's Jonathan Van Ness, filmmaker Quentin Tarantino, or up-and-coming artists you should know. The conversations go deep, ranging from discussions about identity and beauty to finding yourself late in life. Listen to The Margaret Cho wherever you get your podcasts. This is a CBC podcast.
This podcast is an extended version of The Debaters, which may contain more mature themes. To stream the radio-friendly version of this episode, download the CBC Listen app or go to cbc.ca/thedebaters. And thanks for listening to the CBC.
Hey Canada, we're ready to Cabot Trail mix it up. From Glace Bay, Nova Scotia, it's The Debaters! The Debaters, where comedians fight with facts and funny, and this audience picks the winner. Now here's a man who we're nuts about, Steve Patterson.
Hey, thank you, Graham Clark. Hello, Canada. Welcome back to The Debaters. It is great to be here in Glace Bay. Glace Bay, the home to the Marconi National Historic Site of Canada, a place that commemorates the early development of radio communications. The very first audio message across the Atlantic was sent from right here. True story. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly what the message said, but I have a pretty good idea how it ended. For CBC, I'm Rex Murphy. Now, are you ready to meet two debaters who will never be radio silent? Let's meet them. This comic believes two heads are better than one and three names are better than two. It's Katie Ellen Humphreys. Katie Ellen Humphreys, there she is, appearing to my left, looking ready for this debate. And this comedian would rather be a fish out of water than a fish in a barrel. It's Lara Ray. Lara Ray. There she is, appearing from the other side. I didn't even know she was coming from that way. Ladies, your topic is one that is near and dear to almost every East Coaster's heart. Oysters. Are they a true delicacy? Now, Cape Breton is host to an annual oyster festival every August. It promises some of the best oysters around and a shucking competition attended by renowned shuckers referred to as star shuckers. This is true. I'm not making that up. Star shuckers, which is funny because I always thought the term star shuckers was a term for the groupies who followed around the Blue Oyster Cult. Anyway, time for a debate filled with pearls of wisdom. So, whereas they are for refined tastes and produce exquisite jewelry, be it resolved that oysters are a true delicacy. Lara, you are arguing for this, please. You have 2 minutes, starting now.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be defending oysters because oysters celebrate pride all year round. For oysters, my friends, are bi. Bi-coastal and bivalval, which sounds both queer and feminist. San Francisco, Long Beach, New York, LA, Miami. Anywhere there's gay people in droves, you will find oysters. It's true here too. You just don't know it yet. But it gets better. Biologically, European and Olympia oysters are transgender. They can be male or female depending on the needs of the community. So one day you're a girl star, and the next you're a boy star. It's why Mike Pence hates oysters. But I'm not here to talk about Mike Pence. I'm here to talk about slimy bottom feeders. Not quite. Also, some of these amazing members of the larger mollusk family make pearls. The pearl oyster takes junk that's just lying around its house and turns it into fabulous jewelry. If there's a queerer sea creature than that, I've never heard of it. Okay, maybe the seahorse. Seahorses are very gay. Yeah. With their queer family values, their commitment to the environment, and the fact they are beautiful, transgender, and delicious, it's only a matter of time before Jason Kenney bans oysters in Alberta. Thank you.
Laura Ray, with an argument on behalf of oysters and a pretty larger statement, too. She's got her work cut out for her, but if there's anyone that could do the job, I know it's her, to tell us why oysters leave her shell-shocked. It's the ocean-wise Katie Ellen Humphreys.
Thank you. Jonathan Swift famously said, "It was a bold man that first ate an oyster." Less well known is the second half of that quote, "Only an idiot eats a second." Lara, you concede that we often eat oysters live. Now, I'm not above consuming animal product, but when it comes to me and an entree, I prefer to be the only one with a pulse. Of course, you don't have to eat oysters raw. You can have them cooked, smoked, barbecued, battered, baked, buttered. Basically, they are the Toronto Maple Leafs of food. Doesn't matter what you do, these suckers aren't getting any better. Let's be honest. When it comes to oysters, the shell is doing the heavy lifting. If somebody served you a plate of oysters not in the half shell, you would be horrified. Excuse me, I did not order the soggy mucus platter. The shells are pretty. Oysters are like New Waterford. The exterior, quite beautiful. But inside... It was once believed that oysters are only safe to eat in months that contain the letter R, because oysters are much more likely to spoil in the warmer months, May, June, July, August, and that is good advice. But I maintain you should not eat oysters in days that end in Y. Thank you.
Katie Ellen Humphreys. She does not like oysters, and she's not afraid to tell you about it. All right, ladies, time for the bare knuckle round. We are debating whether oysters are a true delicacy. So are you ready to Rockefeller? Crack your opponent wide open and wipe the ocean floor with them. Don't put the cart before the horse, Radish, or you just might clam up. That last one might take you a mignonette. That was pretty good. Let's get this shucker started now.
Lara, I don't mean to rain on your pride parade, but just because there are a lot of queer people somewhere doesn't mean there will be oysters. I think you're confusing oysters with Pottery Barn.
First of all, Jonathan Swift also wrote a book while talking about food called A Modest Proposal. One graduate in the audience.
Right.
Where he also suggested the Irish eat their own children, so he's not a good cookbook. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
I think we would all here agree that children also not a delicacy. Some children might be a delicacy in the same way your argument is a delicacy, which is to say, by the word's second definition, feeble or incredibly weak. Oh! It's a debate.
There is also a fourth definition of delicacy, which involves gastronomy, which is what we're talking about, which is that in order to be a delicacy, if you think back especially to French cooking, is there has to be a large measure of cruelty in the preparation of the
Like
dish.
tearing oysters from their
So
bed?
killing them and eating them alive is good. Foie gras, obviously delicious. Veal, shark fin soup, and fish tacos.
Fish tacos are not cruel.
You should see the way I make them.
Oh, that's fair enough around, everybody. We got you a pretty good point there. I can't believe that fish tacos are a French delicacy. They are. It is time now for the firing line. In my hand, I have a list of questions on oysters, brought to you by my favorite action star-inspired dish, Jean-Claude Van Clams. The mussels from Brussels. According to the Toronto Star, the two foods you have to try in Cape Breton are oysters and what? Katie Allen.
Brunch at Main Event.
Guts.
It's a bottle of Olin's and a knuckle sandwich.
That got some play. I'll give you half a point for that. All right. Laura Ray.
Governor's Pub. And based on promising to say that as my answer on the radio, I have eaten there free all week. Governor's Pub. It's delicious. Eat there today.
Nope. According to the Toronto Star, the two foods you have to try in Cape Breton are oysters and chips from the Glace Bay Chip Wagon. Yeah. That is the Toronto Star that wrote that. According to Good Housekeeping, what should you do with shells of oysters after you eat them?
I know this from personal experience.
Yeah.
Throwing them off the balcony is the wrong answer.
That's true. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for reminding us to not do that.
Not going to that wedding again. Yeah.
After you eat them, you should crush up oyster shells and put them in your garden because it helps reduce acidity. Did you guys know that?
Yeah.
No? Did you? Some of you did. You did, ma'am. Okay. Well, 1 point for you. What is the name for the liquid found inside an oyster? Katie Ellen.
Oh, I believe it's...
3 points. 3 points for the act out. Those of you listening, I wish you could have seen that. Laura.
I know this because I love oysters. It's liquor,
Yeah.
right? Because oysters, like many Maritimers, are functioning alcoholics.
2 points for the right answer. That's the firing line, everybody. All right. Just about time for the Savoy Theatre audience to pick a winner. But first, here again to tell us why, when it comes to oysters cooked or raw, she says, nah, it's culinary cut-up, Katie Ellen Humphreys.
There's a lot of romance around oysters' ability to make pearls. But the pretty baubles are almost never found in the oysters that we eat. You're more likely in those to find a pea crab or two. And no judgment, but for me, has crabs is a deal breaker. Speaking of crabs, I think the reason that oysters are pushed as an aphrodisiac is because of the abundance of buck-a-shuck deals. It's just a scam for cheap dates to try to get out of buying you proper food. The only thing that makes an oyster an aphrodisiac is that when you see someone eat one, you know they will put literally anything in their mouth. Are oysters edible? Sure. A delicacy? Nah. No chance. Thank you.
Katie Allen Humphreys. Katie Allen Humphreys with a pretty good point there. More like a not aphrodisiac. I like that. Well, here again to tell us that she's ready to put this debate to oyster bed and say oysters rule, it's the sea savvy, Lara Ray.
Thank you. Back in the early settler days, there were shucked oysters as big as a baby's fist. Before child labor laws, it was easier to make these kind of workplace comparisons. And after a day of working on the reefs, you could sit down to a nice oyster pie, a glass of oyster stout, beer eaten with, and sometimes containing oysters. So in case you're asking, yes, there is something more weird than bubble tea. For 2,000 years, they have kept our shores clean and given us tiny, small, bite-sized portions of protein, which although some, like Katie, find icky, are still not as disgusting as tofu. Thank you.
Okay. Lara Ray. Lots to think about for this audience on both sides. Some interesting points made by either side, but now it's the audience's turn to vote by applause to pick a winner. Who thinks Lara's oyster opinion owned this debate? Lara Ray. Nice support for Lara. Nice support for Lara, okay. And who thinks Katie Allen's anti-oyster arguments really gave him shell? Katie Allen Humphrey. It's very close. It is very close. And we might get letters for this, but I'm giving this one to Katie Allen Humphreys. Oysters are not a delicacy. Big hand for Katie Allen Humphreys and the lovely Lara Ray, everyone.
I'm Trina Winter.
And I'm Thomas LeBlanc.
Welcome to Chosen Family. Every second week, we talk about art, sexuality, and identity with a special guest. Usually queer, but not always.
I completely struggled coming out to my parents as a comedian. Being in the entertainment industry for Middle Eastern people is unheard of.
Affecting change requires people to shake it up.
Listen to Chosen Family wherever you get your podcasts.
What sign are you, by the way?
I'm an Aries.
Of course. I love it.
You're listening to The Debaters on CBC Radio. Did you know you can get past episodes of The Debaters on iTunes? Go to cbc.ca/The Debaters to find out how. And now, back to Steve Patterson.
Hey, are you ready to meet your next pair of debaters? All right then, let's do it. This comic thinks that all's feral in love and war. It's Mark Farrell. Mark Farrell, ladies and gentlemen. There he is. And this comedian believes NASA when they say there's no such thing as a free launch. It's This Hour Has 22 Minutes star, Tret McClellan, everybody. Tret McClellan. Gentlemen, your topic is perfect for Nova Scotia. Alexander Graham Bell versus Alexander Keith. Who is the superior Alexander? Let's figure it out right now. Both legendary residents of this great province, Alexander Graham Bell is famous for inventing the telephone, and Alexander Keith is famous for brewing beer. So together they sort of invented the late-night drunken phone call that people make to their exes. Right? Now it's time for a debate we can all get hung up on. So, whereas the telephone is considered one of the greatest inventions in history, be it resolved that Alexander Graham Bell, AGB, is superior to Alexander Keith. Mark, you are arguing for this, please. You have 2 minutes, starting now.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I'm arguing that Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the phone, is better Alexander than Alexander Keith. For sure, both were innovators. Alexander Graham Bell figured out a way to communicate with another human being over vast distances. Alexander Keith figured out a way to add too much water to beer. But I just want to be clear about one thing. This is not a debate about what's better, beer or phones. I mean, they're both good. I like phones. I like beer. I even like Keith's. It's a great starter beer. But you can't equate the two accomplishments. I mean, let's see if I can come up with an analogy. Like, Keith's beer is to beer what the business signal is to telephones. Just something annoying we grew up with, you know what I mean? Like, I know I'm supposed to be, debating trend and we're supposed to go at it, but I'm not going to knock Alexander Keith. I mean, both of them were just true visionaries, right? Alexander Graham had to conceive a new way that could interconnect our world. And Alexander Keith, well, he had to really take a chance too. He said, oh, geez, I wonder if I can get Nova Scotians to drink beer. Oh, boy, that's a gutsy call there, Mr. Keith. I'm going with Alexander Graham Bell on this one. For the win!
Mark Farrell. Mark Farrell, ladies and gentlemen. You kept it concise. You made good points. Thank you, Mark. Now to tell us that those who like Alexander Keith like him a lot, it's Bell Basher, Trent McClellan.
Alexander Keith is far superior to Alexander Graham Bell, and everyone in this room knows it. Alexander Keith made delicious beer. Alexander Graham Bell made the phone. Who cares? Beer has done far more to make people communicate openly than the phone ever had. I will not talk to someone on the telephone unless I've had 2 beers. One for listening and one for talking. Alexander Keith was crushing it so hard in the beer world that he got into politics and became the mayor of Halifax and then joined the Legislative Council of Nova Scotia. And why not? Why not? If he could make beer here, surely he could say, here, here, easy, right? I hope Andrew Scheer does the reverse and leaves politics to open up his own brewery. Can you imagine tasting a Scheer beer? The beer that's cold and conservative with no personality at all. Alexander Keith, he knew that the phone was going to put out the fun in your life, and that beer was the fun fuel. I have a very, very dear friend. Let's call him Peeve Statterson. My good friend Peeve Statterson, after a long day of work, he likes to jackhammer a couple cold Keiths and go sing karaoke to the top of his lungs like no one's watching. And that Keith-fueled fun will continue until the wee hours of the morn, or until someone pulls out their stupid phone to record him and ruin the party. One of these things makes you sing. The other has an annoying ring. It's Keys for the win. Thank you very much.
All right. Trent McClellan representing Alexander Keith and coming out swinging. All right. It is time for the bare knuckle round, and we're debating who is the superior Alexander Graham Bell or Alexander Keith. So hear me loud and clear, you pair of smooth operators. I want you to make me laugh till I pee, eh? Get past your hang-ups and toe the party line until your opponent runs dry or taps out. This debate is good for what ails you. Because, as they say, lager is the best medicine. Just so you know, I do these puns for mental stimulation. For mental stimulation. Now, let's hop to it at the sound of the bell.
I can't even begin. This is like saying, who's the better Thomas? Thomas Edison, the guy who invented the light bulb and expanded our knowledge of science, or Thomas Dolby, who blinded us with it. Like, yeah, it's a good song, but come on, we're talking about Keiths here.
Let me tell you something. I curse Alexander Graham Bell every single day. You know, I lose my phone. I got to be honest with you. I'll lose it for about an hour. I'll be stressed out for about 60 minutes. And I realize after it's gone, my life is far calmer. I lost a case of beer in 1997, and I'm still not over it.
Okay, well, first of all, when you lose your phone, do what I do. Call it on your landline. That's the only time I use my landline.
Who still has a landline? It's 2019.
Who needs a case of beer? It's 2019. Wait, that
Everybody
doesn't make
needs
sense.
a case of beer. It's 2019. You ever read the news? Just think about back in the day. I'm gonna start that again.
Hey, there's no rush.
I had 6 Keiths backstage.
See, if you'd been on your phone, you'd be fine.
Let's just think about their reputations back in the day. When Alexander Keith walked down the road, people were like, hey, that's the guy that makes delicious beer. When Alexander Graham Bell walked down the road, they were like, hey, that's the guy that made that invention that my wife can reach me on at the bar so I can't have any more great beer.
Okay, that's the bare knuckle round. It is time now for the firing line. In my hand, I have a list of questions on Alexander Keith versus Alexander Graham Bell, brought to you by Alexander Hamilton. Without him, we'd all just be watching a musical about the place where artists live when they can no longer afford Toronto. That one probably funnier. In Ontario, we took a shot. We took a shot at it. We thought maybe here in Glace Bay, they might care about Hamilton. But you know what? Feelings mutual in Hamilton. So you guys are even. Alexander Keith declined what invitation in 1867? Trent?
To be a contestant on So You Think You Can Celtic Dance Canada.
It's incorrect, but I would watch that. Mark Farrell.
He declined the invitation to put flavor in his beer. Bit of a theme here on my...
Audience. The audience has given you 3/4 of a point. He declined an invitation to join the Canadian Senate. Huh? That takes... Do you know? That's like free money. He declined...
He'd still be in it.
+1. A late point. Late point. Following Bell's death, all phones in Canada and the U.S. were silenced for 1 minute in his memory. What happened when Alexander Keith passed away? Anyone? Mark?
There was a huge funeral, and those who liked it liked it a lot.
Trent?
Nothing. People just thought he'd passed out.
When Alexander Keith passed away, the city of Halifax was shut down. That's pretty impressive. What did researchers do with a bottle of century-old Alexander Keiths found in the ocean by a diver? Trent?
They frantically looked for the other 11 bottles.
Incorrect, but 2 points from the audience. The actual answer, what did researchers do with a bottle of century-old Alexander Keiths found in the ocean? They tested it and then drank it. True story. That's the firing line, everybody. All right, Savoy Theatre, almost time for you to vote. But first, here again to tell us he'd like to leave a message for Alexander Graham Bell, and that's Keith Rules. It's the bubbly Trent McClellan.
Mark can argue that the phone brings people together, but does it? Does it, really? People just call each other now. They FaceTime one another, reluctant to getting together in the same room. But we all know people still gather to drink delicious Keiths. Delicious, delicious Keiths. Alexander Keith knew that beer was the carbonated glue of the world. And that was Keith's pint entirely. Alexander Graham Bell, pale ales in comparison to Alexander Keith. I don't even think Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone. I don't. Alexander Keith was in the beer biz 25 years before Alexander Graham Bell was even born. So I think Alexander Keith actually invented the first telephone that we all grew up with.
Oh, okay. Trent's got a couple of cans attached to each other here by string, and if I've got one end, he's got the other. Let me see what I can hear here.
No.
Hey, hold on. Can I get in?
Sorry, Mark Farrell's got something too. Oh, Mark Farrell's got his own end.
We're going to do a conference call. You can't do this.
Conference call now.
Got someone on the other line there.
All right. There's a bit of an echo here, but if we could wrap this up, that'd be great.
Hey, you hang up. You hang up.
Okay, I'm going to hang up.
No, you hang up.
Okay.
I'm going to hang up.
Okay, I'm done. That's Trent McClellan, everybody. Trent McClellan arguing on behalf of Alexander Keith as the greater Alexander. Now, to tell us why saying the inventor of the telephone is superior just rings true, it's someone who will never phone it in, Mark Farrell.
Thank you. I was thinking, I know we like to joke around on this show, and fun's fun, and that's great, but I was thinking there's a larger issue here. I was wondering, why is this even a debate? The phone versus Keith's, whatever, if you like it or not, fine. And then I figured it out. See, Bell did his work, his inventing, he did it here in Cape Breton. Yeah. And Alexander Keith, he did it in Halifax. And, and we all know if something happens in Halifax, it's way more important than if it happens here. I mean, we just know that. Like, take the Halifax explosion. If two ships had collided in Sydney Harbor and blown up, there wouldn't be a Heritage Minute about it. No one would care. But, Halifax. But look, I don't want to get in the way of the way the world works. So if you want to be a bunch of self-hating Cape Bretoners, giving all kinds of credit to the guy who came up with the idea of, hey, why don't I put some beer in bottles and sell it to Nova Scotians? Yeah, then vote for my opponent, sure. But if you're not self-hating, if you're sick of all the glory going to Halifax, while folks on this side of the Canso, straight, do all the work, then remember that the best Alexander in this debate did his best work right here. Thank you.
Mark Farrell delivering a fabulous final argument on the creation of the phone right here in Cape Breton. Nice tactic. It is time to vote, Savoy Theatre, by applause. Who thinks that Mark's pro-Bell banter bagged this debate? Mark Farrell. Whoa. That is a huge response for Mark. Huge response for Mark. And who thinks Trent's pro-Keith conclusions killed it? Trent McClellan. Nice support on both sides. But the winner is clear. It is Mark Farrell. Alexander Graham Bell is the greater Alexander. Big hand for Mark Farrell and Trent McClellan, everybody. Well, that's all for this week. I'm Steve Patterson saying, when it comes to my favorite Alex, I'll take Trebek for 1,000, please, Alex. I'll argue with you again, Canada. Good night.
The Debaters is created by Richard Side. This week's episode was produced by Graham Clark, Nicole Callender, and Josh Bailey, with technical production by Pat Martin and Kenny McDonald. Tracy Rideout is the executive producer of CBC Radio Comedy. And thanks to everyone at the Savoy Theatre in Glace Bay. Hey Debaters fans, be sure to follow us at CBC Debaters for tour dates and exclusive content. That's CBC Debaters on Facebook and Twitter.
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.